Hey guys, me again. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 reasons why you should go study abroad. Guys, just a quick reminder, this video is meant to accompany my Medium article which I wrote before this. The link is in the description below. Go read that before watching this. I think it'll give some feedback on why I'm going to say what I'm going to say. So now on to the main video. So the first reason people should study abroad is so that they can experience the world. So in the article, I talk about how, like, in America, only 42% of Americans own a passport, and how United States is only, 2% of the entire Earth, so, like, why wouldn't you want to go see, the rest of the world, right? But, like, besides that, I also think college is the perfect time to do it. Like, people in college, this is, like, your only time to be able to go study abroad. Most people only go through college once, so you need to take the opportunity, take the time that you have now to go, go to Spain, go to Greece, go to, Italy, go to, wherever it is that you may be, because, once you go into the workforce, you won't have those opportunities to go travel for 4 months, a year, 2 years at a time. So that's why I think it's really important for students now to take advantage of the time that they're given. So in the second reason, I talk about how traveling gives you a different perspective on things, which I think is invaluable. There's no course in college that can teach you that. There's no YouTube video, there's no motivational speaker that can teach you that. I think that going out there, experiencing new things has this impact on you that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Impossible to substitute. So for me, before I came to Korea, I traveled to Toronto and LA, both places I've never been to before, both places I went to alone. And I think those two factors were really important, especially the fact of traveling alone. Traveling alone builds a sort of self-resilience, self-reliance that no other activity has really given me. And at that time, I really needed it, considering I was going through probably the most difficult breakup I've gone through so far in my life. And I don't think without those two experiences, I would have bounced back as well as I did, as quickly as I did, speaking in front of the camera now. And the reason why I believe that is because of the different perspectives that you come from going to Canada or even LA, which is still technically in America, but it's on the West Coast, and I live on the East Coast, and it was a totally different way of living. And human psychology, when you go through a difficult time, especially a breakup or a divorce, you tend to focus on your flaws. You tend to kick yourself while you're down. And I was watching an interesting TED Talk on this, and not trying to get into a ramble or anything way too off topic, but in it he goes, if you cut yourself open, you wouldn't go, oh, let me get a knife and make it deeper. But that's what happens when we go through psychological problems, usually. And yeah, I am guilty of doing that. I think most people are. But going to Toronto, going to LA, especially in Toronto, I went to see the tallest tower in Toronto. I forgot the name of it. And I also went to go see Niagara Falls. And just seeing those I guess masterpieces of what Earth has to offer, and just the scale of how tiny you feel on top of the tower, seeing all the cars and knowing that each car has a dad, has a mom, has someone supporting a family, and just seeing miles and miles or kilometers and kilometers of just people living all with their own life, all with their own problems, fears, desires, insecurities, anxieties, just really shows you how insignificant you are, how small your problems are, and in the whole grand scheme of things. And that sounds really depressing, but when you're self-absorbed in your flaws and your anxieties and your insecurities, like you are after a breakup, after a failure, after a rejection, it is exactly what you need to get over that hump. I firmly believe that. And then so that was awesome. And then I went to Korea, right? Or I'm still in Korea. And I've learned here, what makes me happy, what truly makes me happy. And it's people and traveling. It used to be professional success, and I still do love to succeed professionally, in photography or videography, but I really think that spending time with people, making memories, is something that really just warms my heart in a way that nothing really compares to. And the second thing that I've learned is that in America we live in a land of excess. It's ridiculous. So here, like, so in America we have like normal sized cups, right? So normal is about this at a fast food restaurant, and then here in Korea they're about this big, and you know the portions are different. Just everything is smaller, and you know I've lived by perfectly. I'm not any less happy. In fact, I'd argue I'm more happy here, and I don't know, there's just an innumerable amount of things I could talk about. How my perspective has changed traveling, not only to Korea, but you know, when I went to the Philippines, to Japan, Canada, like I said. And there's just so much that I don't want to fill up this whole entire video talking about this one reason. So I might table this for another reason. So the last reason was a little heavy, I know, but I think it was worth saying, not only because it just shows how important I think traveling is recreationally and study abroad, but I think it offers something a little different than most videos and like articles would say, like, oh, here's 5 reasons why you should go travel, blah blah blah. But so the third reason is lighter, thankfully, and it's talking about how you would learn in different styles. So what I mean by this, is if I use marketing terms, is that a service is always going to vary from provider to provider. So that's a fact that's true in the States. So you know you have, you know, state level colleges, and then you have, you know, like the world renowned MIT, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, you know, etc., etc., etc. But it's also true across, you know, the Atlantic or Pacific Ocean, in the Europe or South America or Asia, and that's because the colleges, you know, over there will have, of course, different curriculums. They'll have, you know, even if they have the same curriculums, ones that transfer back home, they're going to teach it with a different focus. They're going to teach it with, you know, a different learning style. You know, they're going to teach it with a different perspective, which is invaluable because when you come home, you'll be able to use that, you know, different way of looking at things to bring something interesting and new to the table, which is invaluable not only in the classroom but in the workforce. The quality of education will also be different. So if we look at PISA rankings, which are, you know, in the Medium article that I've written, but essentially it's I think it's a yearly test that different countries participate in, and since the United States started in like the early 2000s, they ranked at like 14th place in like reading, math, and science, and since then we have slipped down to the middle of the pack, so like 25, 26, 27-ish range, which is incredibly depressing considering how developed of a nation we are. And so not only will you be able to experience potentially a better education, at least different, when you go to, you know, Europe or South America, whatever, you can experience, you know, potentially a better education. For example, Finland is #1 currently, followed by I think Singapore, China, Japan, you know, the typical Asian countries which dominate the top 5s every year. And also an interesting fact about Finland, also, it's the happiest country in the world as of 2018. So not only if you go study abroad, you have a chance to be happier if you go to Finland, you can receive a better education, a different education, and there are also just values that are like intangible. So, you know, for example, if you go to Japan, you'll learn punctuality, cleanliness. You'll get a really good exposure of what collectivism really means in Asian cultures, which essentially is there's a priority on the group over the individual. Like people value the good for the group than the good for the individual. You can also see in Asian countries as well the competitiveness it is to study. You know, from my perspective, from what I've seen, like in libraries here, it's everyone has a cubicle. It's so competitive. Like there's just this tense air in the library. Like everyone is studying like it's a life or death situation. It's honestly pretty admirable, and it's kind of makes me feel bad about the way I study. Like, you know, I get good grades, but man, these people, like one of my roommates is Korean, and like day in, day out, he's studying, and it's insane. And like, it doesn't just stop there at their work ethic. Like, the silence is so enforced. Like in the library, if you bring a laptop, most Koreans have it by like they go ahead and buy one because they're always in the library. Is that they have like this plastic sheet. I think plastic is the correct material, and it goes over your keys just to further like dampen the noise of the keyboard so you don't disturb anyone around you, which just goes to show how important, you know, the collectivism is, not to disturb anyone, and how important it is for them to study. And there's just like so many different cultural things you'll realize when, hopefully when I go to Spain, I'll learn a little bit more about whatever it is important to Spain. So the fourth reason I don't really see as a reason. I see it more as of an assurance to viewers that might have this dream country in mind, right? But they're terrified of, doing anything about it because they don't speak the native language there. And I'm here to tell you, like, that's not like a concern at all. Like, if you speak English, you're good to go. In pretty much most countries, you're gonna want to study abroad too. And that reason is because more and more countries are teaching more and more English classes because they want more international students. And in an article, I go into statistics about how Germany wanted 500,000 students by 2022, achieved that in 2017. Taiwan wants 150,000 in the same year, achieved that in 2017. So now 10% of their student population is international. Canada does the same thing, but with 450,000, something like that. I'm just spitting ballpark numbers off the top of my head, they might be wrong. But the fact is, more and more countries want more and more international students. And like, that's even true in the United States, which has, the most international students, I believe, in the whole world. And, the 1 million exchange students at any given time support like 450,000 jobs and brought in $37 billion in revenue. So there's a lot of incentive for countries to attract international students, and not only just economical incentives, but also like cultural incentive, like different ways to look at things, different ways to innovate, unique perspectives. Those are all things that you can't manufacture, create, learn. Those are just things that kind of come from like where you're based out of, like where your home is. So, and English is the closest thing that we have to a universal language, with like I think 1.15 billion people speaking it. That's including like native speakers and people that have learned it as a second language. And there's all spread out across all of the world. All, United States, Canada for sure. Most of South America speaks at least a little bit Spanish. In Europe it's spoken alongside French and German, and all the other European languages. And then like here in South Korea, most people here speak pretty good English. Like even the ones like, what I've noticed is from Koreans, they're quite ashamed actually to speak English. They seem really shy. Unless they like specifically focus on English as a major. I've really noticed that as a cultural thing. But even then, their English is fine. It's passable. They can hold a conversation with me. I don't have to speak any slower than I usually do. I can speak about more abstract topics as well. It's not always about like, oh, where are you going? How are you? So I don't really think that fear is anything that should hold you back from going to where you want to go. So the fifth reason is to save money. And that sounds very like clickbait, like, huh, save money, travel, what, impossible? No, it's not. And the fact is because America has the most expensive tuition fees by a humongous margin across the world. And you can take advantage of this, coupled with the pretty much lower living costs anywhere else that you go, to save actually quite a bit of money. Actually like offset transportation, like the plane tickets. And like for example in Korea, my plane ticket round trip was $1,100 here, I believe, but that was offset by the fact that my housing was only $960, $950 for all 4 semesters here. And compare that with Troy, for example, like Shackelford, I think Gardner. I don't even remember the housing names anymore of Troy, but the most like cost-effective housing options at Troy start at $1,800, go up to $3,000, I believe. So just the fact that I'm saving that much money on housing, and includes free breakfast, and then food is super cheap here, like I'm effectively saving money. And, the college pays for the tuition thanks to my scholarship. So study abroad can be really economical if you play your cards right. So that's it for now, guys. I have a couple of ideas for future study abroad topics. The next one will most likely be talking about the application process to actually go study abroad, now that I've hopefully convinced you. So, stay tuned. I'll probably post some other videos of me, just exploring Korea, eating something, or just hanging out with friends. So make sure to like and subscribe. Peace.